Hello, everybody following Cross Border Talks. What are we recording now is not really a talk, but a kind of solo commentary. Let us know if you like or not this form of commenting on things. And I decided to record it because I was truly moved by the report on the trade unions and the state of workers' rights that was published by International Trade Union Confederation. This is not really a brand new document, but it did not get enough publicity at the time when it first saw the sunlight. And I think that as Cross Border Talks are a social oriented medium, as we give a lot of attention to people's self organizations, to protest, and everything concerning the workers' rights. So it would be nice or not nice to start the year 2023 with an assessment of workers' liberties and in what situation are we now. It is even more important given the fact that humanity as such is going through the crisis of livelihood. Another global crisis of capitalism hit everybody in the world, albeit with different severity. And even workers in the global north, even workers in Europe, the supposed garden of freedoms, are now discovering that workers' rights are neither given forever nor something really obvious, even in so called major democracies, and that unfortunately violations of workers' rights are a trend, and a trend that has been recorded by International Trade Union Confederation, among others. So the report on the workers' right shows us that in 9-year trends, because this is the scale on which they are collecting information on basic workers' rights, basically most of the key indicators of workers' freedoms are becoming worse and worse. The right to strike, which seems obvious for people in the more developed economies with a history of workers' movement, is absent in most of African countries, is being violated in the southeastern countries, and is definitely also not obvious in the Americas, and even in Europe. The violations of workers' rights have been recorded. Only 9 countries in the world were given the highest note or just sporadic violations of rights. All other countries of the world were labeled as those who with repeated violations of workers' rights, regular violations, systematic violations, or even no guarantee of any rights to the working people. By workers' rights, we understand the right to strike, the right to form trade unions, the right to collective bargaining. So everything that the organized workers movement has been working for more than 150 years. Let me just name the 9 countries that were rated best. All of them are located in Europe. This is perhaps no surprise. We see a couple of Nordic countries there, so Norway, Sweden, Iceland, and Denmark, and Finland. Also, 2 German-speaking countries, Austria and Germany, plus Ireland and Italy. They were basically labeled the best from the point of view of working class freedoms or the workers' rights to organize and articulate the demands. Other European countries ended up either in regular violation of right category or repeated violation of rights category. The system, however, there are European countries also in the class 4, so systematic violations of rights, and here we find Greece and Romania, as far as Europe is concerned. And in the 5th category, or no guarantee of rights, we see Belarus, which is outside of Europe, of European Union, but for many people on the left, it is seen as some area still adhering to the tradition of the working class movements or socialism or anything. No, not in this case. And just in case you were curious, Russia and Ukraine were not put in the rank due to lack of data. But their position would not be very high either. As you can see on cross-border talks, we wrote about both attacks on the independent trade unions in Russia and on the anti-union legislation in Ukraine. Which another point which is truly terrifying. if you have a look at the map compared by the International Trade Union Confederation, is that there are regions of the world where workers' rights are something truly exotic, something that people might have heard of, but which has nothing to do with the reality. The two worst regions in the world would be the Middle East and North Africa, and then Asia Pacific region. There is virtually no country in this area that really offers labor unions a possibility to work, a possibility to shape the reality. Then the next one, there comes Africa, Americas, and Europe still, and the last as the relatively best place to live for workers. And yes, there are still places where being a World Trade Union organizer means that you risk your life. And the Confederation noted more than 10 countries where trade unionists were actually killed for their activities. And they noted even more countries where workers were attacked violently, where they were murdered during the strike or protest actions. And among these countries, we see Bangladesh, with India, Myanmar, the Philippines, and Colombia as an infamous record holder, because this country has been very dangerous for any kind of civil activists for decades. And also, if we go back a bit to the Belarusian example, what happened to the attempts to form independent working class organization after 2020 protest also shows how the democratic rights are connected to the rights of the working class, or wherever democratic standards are violated so blatantly as Alexander Lukashenko did that, the trade unions are usually among the first victims. The trade unions and the working class organizations have can be really powerful. If workers stop production, then the whole economy is hit, and this is something that no undemocratic government can really allow. So perhaps there was a lot of things being said about civil liberties being destroyed in Belarus, and we must not forget that the right to assembly, the right to have a trade union organization was among those violated. And the only trade unions allowed to continue their activities are those that follow completely the government line. Nevertheless, the report shows also that a so-called mature democracy or a old democracy is no guarantee for workers' rights neither. And as I told you, only 9 countries of the world got this best note in the rank for the best places from the point of view of the workers. And such countries as France, with huge democratic traditions, or Great Britain, which is never accused of being a dictatorship, also did their steps against workers' rights. If you followed events in France during the last years, you might remember with what level of brutality was used against the Gilets jaunes, or the yellow vests, during their protests. And more recently, in 2022, the state openly stepped in to finish the strike of the refinery workers. And when we are recording this video on 16th January, there is an ongoing dispute in Great Britain over the new legislation that will block collective bargaining, and that would complicate the activities of trade unions even more. So, as you can see, at the moment when humanity is fighting to survive, both in climate crisis and in livelihood crisis, the organizations that should be defending working people, that should articulate the demands of an absolute majority of people in the world, are being under fire, are being under attack, and are being limited in different ways. For even in the states which do not murder the trade unionists, there are attempts to limit their actions. All the times there are attempts to limit their capacities. All the times there are attempts to put their action into some framework that would be satisfactory rather for the business, for the owners, than for people who want to fight for their basic rights with the help of trade unions. And these basic rights are the wages that allow to survive and basic safety at the workplace. Well, this is not really an optimist information, but I think that we should be aware what is the state of things now. And if we, even we living in European countries, we should not be so confident that some workers' rights, some freedoms that were that seem apparent to us that will stay forever. They are not obvious for most of working people in the world, and they might come under attack in our European homelands as well. Well, thank you very much. That was the comment on the 2022 report of the International Trade Union Confederation. And we are going to continue writing on workers' rights, workers' protest, and social issues on cross-border talks. Please follow us.